In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. In the abstract, we see that for the answer to the question, when I search the blog for the answer to the question, is there any theory of effective, appropriate, and efficient communication on social media in the scenario of information and communication technology used in postmodern era of global communication refer to digital devices and tools? The researchers critically analyzed this course on a blog and developed various concepts and propositions of different theories referred to by the individual author in the fields of communication. The discourse led to developing a theoretical interpretation and framework for individual fit common factor IFCF theory of social media communication. The study was qualitative in nature. The methodology used was critical discourse analysis of literature and blogs available on different theories, models, framework, conceptual and theoretical propositions on information and communication conveyance, convergence and divergence. Conveyance, convergence and divergence through different synchronous and asynchronous social media technology and tools. As a result, the researchers developed a model for individual fit common factor IFCF theory of social media in the present paper to be extended for efficient, appropriate, and effective communication in open and flexible virtual learning environment framework in the next paper, inshallah, to link it with learning communities and community perspectives. In the introduction, you say that when we need a theory, so this theory is just like a microscope. They provide us the smallest details present in the structure of any concept or any construct. So a theory is just like a microscope through which smallest units of complex structure that highlight something as a whole is seen. It ignores the irrelevant and focuses on relevant concepts and constructs that we already know and develop our understanding to the process of how we know and apply it in practical situations. In the context of communication, theories provide an abstract understanding of the communication process for making it more efficient, appropriate, and effective. Hence, a theory of communication is a summary about the nature, structure, and function of the communication process. How we communicate with each other through social media, what is the nature of this, and what is the structure and function of it. This will be clear when we study these communication theories. And there are varieties of theories which are present, and the context of the study is to study these theories in the context of social media, which is in new development and the communication mode is changed. In the present study, the researcher tried to summarize various theoretical models, frameworks, concepts, and propositions for developing an applicable theory of communication in social media context. Communication is generally defined as the process in which people intellectually create, sustain, and manage meaning. When the people share their knowledge and they collectively create, sustain, and manage meaning for something, so this is the communication between the or among the persons in a learning community or in practice. So communication requires media. First, the channel for conveyance from the sender to the receiver, from one end to the another. There is a medium is required to convey the message. And there is communication influence. Communication influence social class or group. When something is communicated to the group or class or community of practice or learning community, so that will definitely influence them. So this communication may be synchronous and asynchronous through media. So in the social media, there are different tools and characteristics and services that make the communication in synchronous means at the same time. For example, when we are using Facebooks or when we are using the emails, so there are different moods. Some of them are providing this at the same time, and some of them the information is conveyed, but it is seen and discussed later on. So that is known as synchronous. Synchronicity and our communication through media, this also has impact on our communication. Effective, efficient, and appropriate communication is required whenever there is communication through digital devices. So that communication must be efficient, effective, and appropriate. Communication always is there in the community of practice. Well, for example, here we are in the community related to the education and learning, teaching, learning process. So this is our community, and we are discussing, and this conference is held in that context, the context of education, pedagogy, curriculum, etc. So there are types of communication theories. Different theories are available. Some of the theories are common sense, the others are pragmatic and eclectic, functional, and the third category is that of scholarly. So in this study, the scholarly theories were analyzed, they reviewed, and different factors and constructs and variables were developed for individual fact communication and common factor theory. Evaluation criteria for the study is how to evaluate this theory. So there are two components, one is individual and the other is fact. So these the different concepts and constructs were inductively, there is analysis through induction and then synthesis through deduction. Methodology of the study, textual analysis and critical discourse, while the approach is a mix of social science and humanity, because the theory is developed both deductively and inductively for convergence and divergence of it. The convergence means when we are communicating something and the community of practice, the other person also agrees with us. So this is convergence of thought, convergence of message. But when the person is diverging, means his opinion is different from us, so their divergence is created. So after conveyance, there is convergence as well as divergence in communication, and this may be in the face-to-face form or in the social media form. So when the data was analyzed and different theories were reviewed, there are the four types of theories. The first factor identified was cognitive context. When we communicate, so there is need of cognitive context. In the cognitive context, there are four theories: message design logic, communication accommodation theory, etc. And the interpretation is that the table can be interpreted as that any message communication requires a content presentation to be logically coherent, socially and culturally approved, reducing the uncertainty and doubt, and to be conveyed in a manner that it must become congruent with the self-image of the individual for better convergence or divergence of opinion, idea or thought. Individual factor is found in this cognitive component. The other factor identified in the literature review or in the blog analysis, that is social factor in communication. So the four theories were reviewed, and the result is that the message communication requires congruence with the personal self-image as well as social image of the individual. There are two images of the person, one is personal image and the other is social image. So the communication must be according to the personal and social image of their social image, social relations were in the context of this factor. The other group of community of practice factor. When there is a group or community of practice, so that factor, the discussion will be in that context. For example, we are discussing here, we are in the community of learning, community of education, and we are discussing the things critically and analyzing different concepts in the education context. So this is interpreted as the message communication requires presentation according to structure and types of group or community of practice, so that it creates shared understanding and completion of. Their shared understanding is also created, but some of them will have different opinion, so that is divergence. Organization factor is also used in the communication, and the three theories were reviewed, and they say that the message communication for the achievement of organizational goals required that its presentation must increase the knowledge and information of individual so that organization objectives are achieved. So here the organizational context is taken as a factor. The other factor is persuasion or influence factor. It means that whenever there is communication, so that will have effect on the individual. So in this context, 5 activities were reviewed, and the table is interpreted as a message communication must create attitudinal change and persuasion or influence for plain action, but keeping the identity of the self or individual intact. Again, there is individual fact factor. Power and authority is another factor, and power and authority is there in organizations. Some are subordinate and the others are superior. So, in that context, the 4 theories were there is communication between subordinate and the person in authority, and this is interpreted as a message communication requires that the person with authority or power must create environment so that the organization goals are achieved with different styles. There are individual differences. So the person in power will take consideration of this problem. Technological mediation in communication. Nowadays, the technology is playing a role in conveying the messages, and the communication is through social media and other the synchronous and asynchronous mode. So in this context, there is the interpretation of the table for 3 or 4 theories. This is the message communication requires some channel or media, and the features and characteristics of media must satisfy the needs and be useful for individual to create and produce quality output with little input in an organization. Output and input, this is relating to the efficiency of the organization. Societal, religious and cultural factors also must be considered in communication, and there are 4 theories about that were reviewed, and this is interpreted as that a message communication through social media requires that it must be appropriated with different societies, religions and cultures for its content, presentation, and assimilation of the individual for its effectiveness, appropriateness and efficiency. These are the above summaries of theories and their interpretation for individual fit factor in IFCF theory can be used for different variables, identification and analysis in the theory of communication to social media. Whenever we are studying we are going for research in the social science, so there are different factors that must be analyzed, the construct must be identified, and the construct must be then converted into indicators. And this process is known, and then nomenological network is created through this process. And this is necessary for instrumentation of the research in social science. So the main purpose of this study is to develop the factors and constructs in social media communication, and to make the nomenological network and this communication for the further study in quantitative manner. Variables identified, there were 19 variables identified, and this is adhesion, cohesion, context, expectation, face and self version. The other is individual attributes or qualities, interest, involvement and engagement, needs, drive reduction, relation, linking, reward and punishment, rules, law, norms, principle, values, uncertainty and ambiguity, values and belief system, power, politics and control, channels, media of communication, synchronicity and asynchronicity, openness, flexibility, task, orientation or knowledge, message, persuasion, attitude, values, respect towards the speaker. Message, ubiquity with familiarity and newness of the content. So the above tables from 1 to 9 can be interpreted as from this is any message communication content, different contexts, and can be evaluated on the basis of various factors and variables, constructs, and individual fit is the base for the formation of nomenological network. So it means that we move from factors to the variables. And what is the fact theory? So the fact is related to the media, social media, and individual is the person. So there is media and there is the person. So the person has different attributes, and the media is also having some characteristic features. So when the features of the media are congruent with the features of they are mapped with the individual interests, etc. So then the communication becomes effective, appropriate, and efficient. Components of the individual fit common factor theoretical framework and social media communication. This is a review of literature, and there are 4 components identified. One is technology, social media and communication. The other is task, representation, simulation and interaction in social media communication. The third one is communication process, synchronicity and asynchronicity in social media. And there is individual users, sender and recipient, are consumer and producer. These are the 4 components, main components related to this theory. Operational definition of individual fit common factor theory of communication. So if we operationally define individual fit common factor theory of communication in social media, it will take into consideration first the task to be relevant, second the technology to be congruent, the third is the communication process with appropriate information, and the fourth users. These are the 4 components. It must also take into account the principles of rationality, attitudinal inclination, flexibility, and finality. These are the 4 other components. Means that when the person is rational and the person is having interest, attitudinal inclination, the person wants flexibility and the person wants inefficient. Right. So there is the conclusion. The conclusion of the individual factor. Therefore, discussion and review can be summarized in few words as the functional and dynamic relations and social cognitive dual node function network between individual, task, social media, and communication process for achieving the objective and goals of information, and task communication effectively and efficiently through the use of ICTs and virtual learning environment framework designed for open and flexible learning when there are common factors in both individual and effect for appropriation or mapping is called individual fit common factor theory of social media communication. The theoretical proposition or findings of the study are: first is the communication through social media needs fitness to both individual users and the features of the fit in order to become effective, efficient, appropriate. And when the factors of individual and social media communication are met, then the communication process becomes effective. The evaluation of the effectiveness, appropriateness, and efficiency of social media communication requires virtual learning environment framework. Individual fit common factor theory of social media communication will be using factor analysis for quantitative and qualitative research. The communication through social media will be effective, appropriate, and efficient when there is the presence of common factors, constructs, and variables in both individual and facts. So there is then a discourse analysis of the plan. We will skip this due to time limitation. Theoretical framework is also devised in this theory, and again the conclusion of the summary of the analysis of blood. So the above critical discourse analysis can be summarized in a few words as: there is need and gap to be bridged by a theory of social media communication in order to produce individual fit mapping and framework for holistic understanding and data mining in social media communication and interaction. So the individual fit common factor theory of social media communication is introduced in this paper for further extension and exploration in the next. Thank you.